Hello, CP Bio students, and welcome to the 8 characteristics of life. Exciting and stimulating notes. These 8 characteristics of life are all shared by living organisms. Anything that's alive is going to have these characteristics. Anything that's not alive, guess what, is not going to have these. Okay, so you'll be able to introduce some things that are alive by using these and eliminate some that aren't by also using this list. The first characteristic is called universal genetic code. All organisms store information for life in their genetic code, and that information could be anything. It could be genes, traits, characteristics, how tall you are. That is carried in something called DNA. The molecular structure is called DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. I'll say it again. You must know this. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Now, you don't have to spell it just yet. We're going to get to that a little bit later. But you got to know what DNA stands for. And it contains your genetic code. You're unique. This structure is a molecule of storage and heredity. Right? So it's passed down from parent to offspring. You contain genes and traits from both your mom and dad. That's just the way it goes. The genetic code for all organisms is almost identical. We differ from the animals in this world by very little. And we'll get into that a little bit as well. Characteristic number 2 is growth and development. Growth, an increase in size, which means you get more cells. The amount of growth varies by organism. The size of a bacterium changes very little. I mean, it's a cell and it grows very little. But then you take a look at an elephant. An elephant grows from a microscopic fertilized egg, which is called the zygote. A fertilized egg is called the zygote. And it grows into an enormous animal. Right? You can take us, for example, too. You know, we start off in the embryo, and then we develop into these multicellular, huge organisms. All right, so growth and development takes place if you're alive at different stages, but it happens. So what does development really mean? Organisms change in form as they develop. All right, so many organisms will start off as one thing and change into something different. And if you look down here, we've got the caterpillar here, which is going to go into its cocoon and then be born as a butterfly. All right, the monarch butterfly is a very unique organism. All right, you've got tadpoles and the frogs, and I'm sure you can think of 10 different examples that this occurs in. So development is developing into the final stages of what they actually become. Characteristic number 3, being able to respond to their environment. Living things respond to environmental stimuli. Now, a stimuli is something that occurs on the outside of their body that makes them move. For example, you touch a hot stove, you're like, hi, okay? That's a response to stimulus or a stimuli. That's what that information there means. A stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. And again, it could be anything. Cold, hot, pain, anything out there. Here are some examples. Seeds sprout in responses to watering. They grow better. If they don't water, they grow smaller. Birds migrate in response to seasonal changes. An adaptation to the environment is a way a population of organisms responds to long-term changes in their surroundings, meaning how do they adapt? What makes them better fit or better suited for their environment? Each species has unique adaptations that enable it to survive in its particular environment. Can you name any that we may have that allow us to respond to our environment or adapt to our environment? Right here, okay, opposable thumbs. All right, opposable thumbs are an evolutionary advantage for us to be able to grab onto things. Right, our previous ancestors and other organisms didn't have that. Okay. Another example, coloring for specific animals. I don't know if you can see it here, but there is a moth that is colored almost exactly as the tree bark to protect it from being eaten. And then we got some webbed feet down here by, I believe this is called a booby. Yeah, that's the name of a duck, kind of a duck animal, a booby. Characteristic number 4, reproduction. Living things produce new organisms like themselves through a process called reproduction. If you are alive, you have to be able to make more of whatever you are. So a lot of times you can eliminate whether something is alive or not alive by just looking at this one. For example, sand is often confused as being alive. I've had so many students tell me that sand is alive. And I say, can sand make more sand? And they're like, well, no, it's over. Sand cannot make more sand, all right? So It is not alive. Reproduction is not essential to the survival of an organism, but for the continuation of a species. You can be alive and not be able to reproduce. There are many sterile organisms out there that occur this way, and we'll get into some of those a little bit later. There are two types of reproduction. Sexual reproduction, which requires a union of two cells, or two different organisms that mate. And an asexual reproduction, which requires only one cell. The example I like to give for asexual reproduction would be as follows. Picture one of your classmates walking down the hallway, and then all of a sudden, right out their side, pops a mini-me of them. All right, that would be asexual reproduction of this characteristic. Right? No two people needed for that one. Characteristic number 5, maintain a stable internal environment. Maintaining a stable internal environment is called homeostasis. Organisms need to maintain internal stability even when external conditions are changing. For example, what is the average temperature of the human? 98.6. Okay? If it's 110 degrees outside, your internal body temperature doesn't get to 110. It stays at 98.6, barring that you are healthy. If it's 5 degrees outside, like in that winter vortex we had a couple years ago, your internal body temperature is 98.6. That's an example of homeostasis, or maintaining a stable internal environment. So temperature is one of them. pH, moisture levels, all must be maintained depending upon what kind of organism you are. They all have different needs. Sweating when you are hot. All right, we're running around, we sweat. We decrease our body temperature by the sweat evaporating. That's why when it's humid out, it feels like you can't cool down because the sweat will not evaporate as fast. Here's a fun fact. Dogs do not sweat. They pant. So they kind of sweat through their mouth is how they handle their heat. The internal balance is called homeostasis. Again, like I mentioned, that's how you spell it there. Now we're going on to number 6. Use of energy. Right? Living things use energy for life's processes. And every time I see that right there, that picture of the kangaroo, I want to be like, hey-ya, I want to hey-ya. Like Lion King? No. Well, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I sound just like it. All organisms take energy from the environment. Example, light energy enables plants to make food. Photosynthesis, right? You've heard of that. The combination of all the chemical reactions that an organism goes through to build or break down materials is called metabolism. That's a great vocab word, metabolism. Building up and breaking down of materials. I'll definitely use that one at some point, so make sure you know that one. All right, characteristic number 7, cells. All living organisms are made of cells. Okay? Cells make up one level of organization of life. Atoms, molecules, and let me slide this over here so you can see that. Atoms, molecules, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organism. That's how they're all divided up. So the smallest thing is an atom. That's a good question. I may ask you, hey, what's the smallest thing you can have in an organism? You'd say the atom, followed by the molecule, followed by the macromolecule, the cell, which we're discussing now, tissues, like your skin, an organ, like your liver. These are lungs over here, and then organism, which is the whole lion over there. Okay? Unicellular means that you have one cell. One, like a unicycle. You ever see those pictures of the old timers where they're riding a unicycle? Okay, one tire, okay, unicycle, unicellular, one. Example, bacterium, paramecium. And I'll show you those later if you don't know what those are. Multicellular is made of many cells. We as humans are multicellular organisms. So are most of the animals that you will think of. Dog, cat, lion. Whatever you might think of that way, also multicellular. Now to number 8, evolution. Adaptation. Characteristic that allows organisms to better able to survive in an environment. And we discussed this a little bit on a previous slide. You got your koala over here. Evolution is the way populations change over time. Now that's the key, okay? Over time. You don't go to bed one night and then wake up with a tail the next day. Okay, that's not the way it is. But you can see that humans have remnants of a tail because they have a coccyx bone or a tailbone. Right? Some people think it'd be cool to have a tail. I think it'd be tough to sit in a seat if you had a tail. You have to stick it out the back. But anyway, I digress. That's what evolution is. Change over time. Evolution is a result of the accumulation of many, many adaptations. Again, over a long period of time. Okay? Not overnight. So now, can you name all 8 characteristics? We're going to find out, but I'm not going to show you what they are here. So, stay tuned. Hopefully now to your Nearpod.